So, and she's just not gonna even believe how much better she did.
Oh, it'll be amazing. Actually be able to breathe and have energy and
Have energy, be able to. Good, she's good. She's pushing through, and I think she was supposed to be at 95, and she was like at 110. So. Ben.
yeah. Well, hey girls. Hi there. I believe you. Good morning. Yeah, her voice does remind me of the other girls' voices too. It's very similar. Yeah, there, right there. Anybody else?
Benny's fine today.
Coming back from Florida?
Yeah.
Dolores on there, she's not feeling well
Yes,
today.
ma'am. Is the book in here? Anybody had any Sunday school money? We had a safe trip, and it was very nice. Visiting with family up in the northern end of the state. Actually, really good to see Jessica's dad's family, or his cousins and stuff. Where's Andre? I'd say weather related and pollen related. Okay. We'll be praying for Andrea. Anybody else?
Robert's doctor is back this week, and he has to pin down to get a new MRI, so hopefully this week we get some answers, or at least an MRI schedule. Plus you.
Adam, you open us?
Father, we lift up some things for you, Lord, we just pray for each and every one of your circumstances, Lord, we know that you'll work in them. And Lord, we ask that you bless the study, Lord, bless James as he teaches, and thank you, give you all the praise for it, in Jesus' name.
Amen. We're in Luke chapter 8. The study that we're in the middle of is evidence from the New Testament. Hey girls, good morning. Evidence of Jesus being God in the New Testament. So, the two miracles we have today are Jesus healing a woman with an issue of blood and then raising Jairus' daughter from the dead. So, looking at Jesus' miracles and the purpose in which they're accomplished in the lens of it defining Him being God. So again, that's the purpose as we go through the lesson today of these events that happened in His life that point to Him being who He said He was. Last week, we get Jesus from John saying He is the I am. Before Abraham was, I am. So Jesus outwardly saying, I am Yahweh, I am God. Again, the I am, that's what that means. It's the same name we use for Lord in the Old Testament, Yahweh. So Jesus said that in John. Now we're going to see some actions associated with it. Well, hello, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm going to take that to Miss Carrie. So leading up to the events in chapter 8 of Jesus and experiencing and leading to these healings, we have Jesus healing a demon-possessed man in the Gadarenes, the possession of him with Legion. Jesus calms the storm out on the Sea of Galilee with the disciples, and they see that. He speaks about, he's in Galilee, he gives the parable of the sower in the kingdom of God, and then again those other miracles. So this is in the middle of Jesus' ministry where we find these events taking place. And I think it's pretty neat. If you can imagine the word of mouth that's been going around about Jesus. Jesus would get into a boat, and that's what happens in chapter 8, is that he gets into a boat, and before the boat gets to wherever he's going, the people are already there waiting for him to land. So the people on land are running to wherever he's going next. I think we have trouble, I know I have trouble sometimes, picturing Jesus in this space of the first century, traveling around Galilee and then into Judea. He didn't do this in a vacuum. It wasn't done in secret. Everybody knew him. There was such a big crowd of folks that followed him. We read so many accounts in Scripture of thousands of people getting fed because they followed him. So the picture of Jesus getting on a boat and trying to maybe get away for a few minutes and pushing through a crowd like we're going to read today, and the crowd almost stops him. There's that many people. What's the biggest event you've ever been to with the most people? A concert? A ball game of some sort? I know going to like a football game, there's like 80,000 people there. That's a lot to me. That's a ton of folks at a big pro football game or a big college game. So trying to get through crowds and get where you're going to go, that's, we can kind of imagine that. So imagine Jesus as he's walking these streets in Galilee, in Capernaum, in the Decapolis, in these different cities as he's going through. These crowds are literally like that around him. There may not be 40 or 50,000, but in these towns, it's everybody. It's everybody. The whole town comes out and follows him. So Jesus goes on these trips. He goes to the gatherings, heals this demoniac with Legion, and then goes back into Galilee again. And here we have in verse 40 in our lesson today, Jesus is coming back. Jesus returned back to where he had kind of began his ministry. And we have this story here of a man, a ruler of the synagogue, that comes to him. So we're going to talk about Jairus first. Hello, Debbie.
Morning.
So,
Now there goes next book.
yeah, the two more show up. You got to add Terry. I'm sorry.
Somebody else
Do
is.
you have a watch?
Yeah, well, you know what?
It was time change, right? Today is
Oh,
time
that's
change.
right.
We're not victims, we're just lazy.
I was not lazy.
I was saying
We just let it put it.
Thank you for making the drive. I mean that. I absolutely, as the one who lives the closest, I appreciate everyone who drives through here. Because sometimes it's hard for me to cross the road, and you guys are making a much bigger sacrifice than me, and I appreciate it. So, we're chapter 8 of Luke, beginning in verse 40, and we're going to read about this leader of the synagogue, and then very quickly we're going to go into the second story of the woman healed. So we've got two stories of Jesus' healings running simultaneously. They're parallel stories going at the exact same time. So who would read that first section there, verses 40 through 44?
When it came to pass that when Jesus would return, the people gladly received him, for they were all waiting for him. And behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was the ruler of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and besought him that he would come into his house. For he had one only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she lay dying. But as he went, the people thronged him. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood ceased.
Thank you, Deanna. So, people were expectant of Jesus to come back. So when he gets off the boat and steps onto dry land, There's a crowd who were what? Gladly receiving him. They were ready for him to be back. I think that teaches us a lesson too, right? Are we expectant like that of Jesus? Are we expectant when we come to church on Sunday morning, expectant of Jesus to be there? Just some kind of neat thoughts and just those little words there that these people were looking forward to Jesus coming back. They were all waiting for him in verse 40. Man, that's kind of an indictment on us, isn't it? Morning, Robert. Are we waiting on Jesus? Are we expectantly, his daddy, are we expectantly, gladly receiving Jesus? Are we waiting for him? Jairus is an official in the town. He is the leader of the synagogue. And if you read your lesson, what were the duties of a synagogue leader that we assume? He is literally, he's the one making sure that the texts are right, is laid out accordingly. He's the one that the lights are on, the air conditioning. Yeah, he's got the candles lit. He is the guy that makes sure everything is ready for people to come in and worship. It's a pretty important task. I kind of think, I like to think, I am that guy here. I like to have the coffee going and turn the lights on. I like it. I think that's a cool job, right? It's a hospitality job. It is not only is it a hospitality job, for him it was an order of worship job too. Is to make sure that not only was the environment ready for worship, but the important parts of it were there already.
And it was more than flipping a switch.
Absolutely. It was effort. It was
Yeah, it
work.
was work.
Now, and we get an idea when we read sometimes that all of these authority figures were just mad at Jesus. Last week, what did we read about some of the Pharisees that were with him? Do you remember? Some of them believed, right? Some of them heard him and believed. And here we've got a leader in the Jewish synagogue that's going to show faith over even some of his disciples that was ready to believe Jesus. So,
Do we know is it faith or desperation? Do we know?
well, that's what Jesus said to him, right? Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. Believe, and she shall be made whole. So I'm guessing that there is a response of belief for her to be made whole. We're going to talk about faith. Chris thinks it's a great question when it comes to the woman who touched his garments. Because her action, was it out of desperation? I believe yes, but it was also out of faith. I believe they're both very similar in that aspect. So, verse 41, and behold, as he's in this crowd, a man named Jairus, there came a man named Jairus, and he was the ruler of the synagogue, and he fell down at Jesus' feet. Now, what does the posture of falling down at somebody's feet tell us?
He understood who he, I don't know that he understood who he was.
He knew there was reverence, though.
He reverenced him, absolutely. That's an act of reverence towards someone who is higher up.
Humility.
Humility. So I think those are the absolute correct answers there. He was acknowledging a higher power, that Jesus had higher power than him, who was the ruler of the synagogue, and in itself it was a pretty high position. So, what did he beg of Jesus? What did he beseech him about?
See his daughter.
To come to my house and see his daughter. Why?
She was dying.
She was dying.
She was dying. Now, I've been reading Leviticus the last couple of weeks. What are the risks Jesus would have if he goes into a house where a girl is dying? Based on Levitical law for a rabbi.
Becoming unclean.
Becoming unclean by doing what?
Touching a dead body.
Being in there with a dead body, right? So, in Leviticus chapter 19 and chapters 20 and 21, 22, there's all kinds of Levitical laws about cleanliness and what you can and can't do. There were members of the household that could go into a dead body and handle it, but the priests weren't allowed to do that because it would make them unclean and they wouldn't be able to perform their duties in the tabernacle then, but in the temple later on. So Jesus, as our great high priest, I want you to think about this for a second, has no fear of uncleanness. It's going to be important in just a minute. Why does Jesus have no fear of uncleanness? Why does Jesus eat with sinners and tax collectors and touch those with leprosy and spit on people's eyes and doesn't mind going and doing these things that according to the Levitical laws would have been prohibited? Why is Jesus...
When all creation was made through you, I think you got any words about spit?
Right. Those things that would make a priest unclean wither and die in the presence of God.
And he makes them clean he makes them clean instead of them making him unclean.
He is the source of holiness. He is the source of cleanliness. Nothing can pollute the source. So, going into Jairus' house, I ain't got no problem with that. Just speaking as if I were Jesus, which I'm not. Please don't catch that. Jesus has no problem going to Jairus' house. He has no problem with what we're going to read in just a minute. A woman unclean with an issue of blood, who would have made his garment unclean, would have made him unclean, would have made everywhere she was around unclean. Ain't got no issue with that, does it? There is no issue with Jesus with uncleanliness getting to him. So, the woman, he has a daughter, it's his only daughter, and she was dying. We don't know of what, we don't know why, we don't know what the situation was, but they knew that the situation was desperate. And he's at Jesus' feet, and verse 42 says, as he went, Jairus went, the people thronged him. Who's him? Jesus. As Jairus goes and lays down at Jesus' feet, or even as Jesus went and he traveled, the people crowded around. That word thronged him means that they were choking the area out, that he couldn't move. That's literally what it means, is that it was choked down. No movement. That many people tied up. Who gets claustrophobic? I don't like crowds. Not very much at all. Don't like being stuck next to 1,000 other people. Coming out of Rupp Arena is like one of the worst things, because you're with 50 other people that are right around you, with another 500 around them, and another 20,000 around them. And it's like this. Don't like it at all. Coming out of like the UK football field, Kroger Field, they have these spiral ramps that go up and down the floors. And you're with everybody like that. There's no freedom. There's no way to get out. Not bother Jesus at all. And this woman, that's why I'm making these, trying to make these visual things, is this woman fought that crowd to get to Jesus. She fought a choking mass of people, shoulder to shoulder, just to get to Jesus. Now listen to what she says here. Verse 43, and a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood was staunched. Why did she go to Jesus to touch his garment? We don't read about it in Luke, do we? The other Gospels, what do they say was her motivation?
She thought if she would just but touch the hem of his garment,
She would be healed.
Faith.
There was faith, right? She had faith that if she could just touch the hem of his garment. Now, in the Jewish aspect, it talked about that hem of his garment and what it represented. There are a number of cords and tassels that represented different things. And it was a very prescribed thing that Jewish folks were supposed to wear. So if she could get to this holy thing, this very specific, special, sacred thing that was on Jesus, even touching that would make her whole. In her mind, that was her faith, that touching that would make her whole. It wasn't like the blind men. What were the blind men calling out for Jesus? They said, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. They were calling out to him to come do something. Her faith was that Jesus doesn't have to do anything. I just have to be close enough to do it. So, two different kinds of faith. Jairus' faith was, Jesus, come to my house, do something for my daughter to make her well.
But there's two different, this is just my part.
No, Mike, please.
The synagogue ruler fell on his knees, and the lady did like a sneak attack.
Yes.
There's two different postures.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that the lady had faith yet. That's why, as we read the rest of this story, I'm almost tired.
It's true. Men don't get it, they don't understand women, why she had the faith that she had.
Why would she have gone?
But Jesus did.
Desperation, tried everything else.
Well, that's how we
They
go.
say he can heal me.
That's how we go.
Well,
But it's still faith in the end.
her being a woman though, would she have been able to go right up to him?
See, that's what Tony Evans spent his time on, was that we had to realize that she shouldn't have even been in the crowd.
Yeah.
Because that women weren't allowed, they didn't even think they were worth saving. You
I
know,
don't know, is that true?
well, I don't know, I'm telling you what Tony Evans said,
And she went in
I agree with you. I
that
agree
they
with
went, that she went
The women
in.
aren't worth saving.
you. In that culture, well, I mean, in the culture, not in Jesus'.
I
Well,
always
but I
thought,
mean, she was, with her blood problem, she was actually bleeding, and that's what they mean by a blood problem.
Yeah.
Then she would not have been allowed around anyone because
Exactly.
she would have been clean.
that's true.
So man, woman, or whatever, she wouldn't have been allowed to be around them because of the blood.
But I always thought about the Sermon on the Mount and everything, though, we're just men there. Were they?
It says, the Sermon on the Mount, I don't know, but if you look at I think the Luke account of the feeding of the 5,000, it says 5,000 men plus women and children. So they're there. I mean, there are women that are there. And if you look at some of the accounts, Jesus' entourage included Mary Magdalene, his mom, several others that were, Salome, I think was her
That's a
name.
lot of women we don't understand.
I can speak as in today's time, because for me, I have literally had more surgeries probably than the whole church put together, because at least 3 or 4 times a year, I'm going under the knife, they're cutting something out, they're always finding something, and I don't no longer lean on physicians. Yes, I do still go seek them, but
Yeah.
everybody's like, how do you look the way that you do? How do you not break down and just fall apart when they're saying this, that, and the third? And I just say, well, I just give it to God, because if it wasn't for Him, I still would not be here today. There has been so many times when I had a heart attack and they told me I had a panic attack. Went to Baptist, they gave me something for anxiety, but I had a heart attack on the main artery.
And she was like that.
I'm not saying she didn't have faith. I'm just saying it's.
You did say that right off the bat.
Okay, all right, kind of backtrack a little
Okay,
bit.
just a little, okay.
But here, I mean, she had a different kind of faith. maybe. Why then did Jesus stop the whole entourage and say, hey,
Okay, we're going to get
Okay.
there. I understand.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, but how many times have we tried everything except asking God for it?
that's sweet, yeah, that's sweet.
Why is it always the last thing to do, right? Why do we always go to like her, go to the physicians first, and we expend all of our efforts and our money, like she did, on all that. All right, so Leviticus chapter 16, I was digging for it while you guys were having that conversation. And if a
Going
woman,
down rabbit hole.
You were invited, but.
I know, I'm back there. If a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, this is Leviticus 15, verse 19. She shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the even. And everything she lieth upon in her separation this time will be unclean. Everything that she sitteth upon will be unclean. And whosoever touches her bed and her clothes, whoever touches anything that she sat on, and her bed will be unclean. And if a man lies with her, he has to be killed. That's in Leviticus chapter 19, while she's in this state. So 12 years of this woman being in this state of separation. from everybody, from human contact, from social contact, from religious contact. She couldn't come into the sanctuary. She couldn't come into the temple. She couldn't participate. Her walking in this crowd was prohibited. She couldn't do that because she would make everyone by contact with them unclean, except Jesus. Jesus, the source of all cleanliness, the source of all holiness, the source of everything. She comes to Jesus, taking that risk. Jairus takes a risk. It's his risk that he bows down in front of this guy. It's the risk of his ego. It's the risk of his position in their congregation. It's the risk of all those things to say, I bow down to a greater person. Her risk could have been stoning.
Plus, Jared, I mean, he had a boss. I mean, his boss might have seen that and said, "Yeah,
Absolutely. It's a huge risk. Again, her risk is even more so. Her risk is life or death. She's to the point of desperation, yes, that if something doesn't change, she can't live like that forever. She's done everything humanly possible that she could do for a healing. And whether it's through doctors or, there's no telling what all she tried. She gets to Jesus though, and what did we read there in the last verse, in verse 44? Immediately the blood stops. It quits. She's healed immediately. Jesus on his way through the crowd stopped. Jairus at his feet. The woman comes behind and touches the hem of his garment. Immediately her condition is healed. It's gone. And Jesus, being Jesus, recognizes that and knows something has happened. Something has changed. Now, interesting thought here. When did Jesus realize that this woman was coming? When did he realize that a healing was going to take place? When did he?
When he laid the foundation of the world.
I think it's a really interesting thought that Jesus, I don't know, we get the impression the way Luke writes that he was surprised. But I don't know how surprised Jesus was. I don't think that he was surprised at all. I believe there's a reason for him asking the questions the way he does. Jairus, I got you, brother. I'm on the way to your house. We're going to get through this crowd and we're going to get there. Hold on a second. So let's read what Jesus' response to the woman through verse 48. Verses 45 through 48. I love this. This is so beautiful.
And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" And when all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowd surrounds you and pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace."
What made her well? Did Jesus say?
Her faith.
Her faith. So, I was waiting for us to get to this point. I was going to let you guys argue about her faith, whether or not she had any or not. What does Jesus say?
Maybe she
She
discovered that she had faith.
She did. Your faith has made you whole. Her faith in action. Where was her faith before? When she went to the doctors. The doctors. What would have happened if she'd have stayed at home? Probably died. Probably, or been the rest of her life without. We don't know, but we may assume that.
Now, do you think she thought she was going to be stoned when she had to admit it was her?
There is a fear there, I would think,
Yeah, I do
that
too.
she broke all of those laws to get to it.
She came trembling and falling down.
There was fear there. Absolute fear there. But, I mean, that's the idea of trembling, right?
Right.
That she was terrified.
See, I think that's what he does sometimes, is he'll stop the entourage and just say, if he had just kept going and never said a thing, the lady would never have understood that it was her faith that made her whole.
And not only the lady,
People around.
but he's teaching a lesson, in front of all the people. Her testimony of why she went to him like that. Now, why are all those people around Jesus? There's probably a million different reasons they were there. Some of them was
See
to
the show.
see a spectacle,
Curiosity.
right?
Some
Curiosity.
had faith.
We're following the crowd to see this. But some, we know of two who are at that moment right there because of their faith. We know Jesus' disciples are with him. They're traveling with him. We know the crowd that's waiting there at the Decapolis when he shows back up. They're following him all over the country. They're the groupies that are following him around. Wherever he goes, there's a bunch of them that are just hop
There might have
skipping.
been a lot of Doubting Thomases in there wanting to see what they could see first.
We know there are Pharisees that are there that are trying to catch him and stuff. We know there are always people following Jesus for a million different reasons.
I can't help but think there were people there that had, maybe not as severe a problem as she did, but a problem that they were there because Jesus might fix it, but they didn't quite have her faith.
There you go.
And I think they could have been like, dang it.
Well, and some of them probably did, and they just don't write about it as we learn
Oh,
throughout the whole scripture. There's
We get to John, the end of
Watches
John,
that
right? It
like
says,
that,
if we wrote down all of the things that Jesus did, we wouldn't, the books in the world would know. So yeah, absolutely, Terry, that's a fact. So we have this crowd, we have her. She gives her testimony why she came to Jesus, and we see, she even says the effects of it. My testimony is that I came to Jesus because I was sick and broken, and he healed me. That's her testimony. That's what she says. She declared unto him before all the people for what cause she touched him and how she was healed immediately. That's her testimony. In front of this massive crowd that's got Jesus blocked in the middle of the road. And he said unto her, daughter, and in the King James it says, be of good comfort. Thy faith has made thee whole. Go in peace.
I think the daughter part of it
Isn't it?
He makes it family.
It is. It's intimate.
Yeah.
It's between, with the crowd and everything there, it's between him and her.
Yeah, it's family.
And that's how Jesus is with each one of us, right? Is that even in the crowd, it's intimate with us. His love is intimate with us. So, beautiful thing. This woman's healed from her infirmities. Power comes from Jesus. Now, this is an interesting thought, right? Is that she just touched the hem of his garment. What's holy, what's powerful in the hem of his garment? What about the cotton fabric that's got power in it? Jessica's shaking her head, I love it.
Nothing.
Ain't nothing in that fabric, right?
I don't know why this movie is the Santa Claus where he has X amount of power. And then like he does something and he loses power. Because he immediately was like, power has gone from me. I don't think about Jesus that way where he like has power that has diminished.
But something took it away from him.
Yeah.
He didn't say it was a minute. He just said he felt power go out of it.
That's
Which
true.
means like he has less power.
Denial.
Yeah.
It's always reusable.
If
Always
love, you have
does.
3 children, you're gonna have less love now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I guess it's I have love that's gone out. But for whatever reason, the little thing in those negative watch that like measures stuff.
And that's how we look at it today. It's exactly how we look at that thought today. And it's wrong. And it's Jesus, unlimited power. The power that holds the universe together. That's what Jesus is, right? In him, all things were created, and by him, all things are held together. There is no limit to his power, but he knows when faith accesses it. He knows, he knew when faith accessed it. That power came from him, not the garment. Why is that important? Why does he say that power came from me?
Because we will buy snake oil stuff all day long. Make it good. Fix it.
There were the people with Moses that tried to replicate all of the things that were happening. There are magicians out there that will try to say,
Yes.
oh, this is how we did that. It's not really go.
And we can buy water that's been infused with a blessing from somebody. We can buy prayer shawls. Yeah, we can buy all these things on the internet that you get a guy that's anointed some cloth with oil and it's been prayed over and now it can come heal you at your house. You put it over your TV set while you're watching his show and God's going to work a miracle through you. Where does the power come from? It's not the cloth. It's not the water. It's not the thing. It's the source.
And that's why our testimonies are the power that helps somebody else that doesn't know who he is
Yeah.
to come receive that power through him.
And not to go for counterfeit things.
Right.
Remember the centurion whose servant was healed?
Yeah.
That didn't even touch anybody.
Yeah.
Or even or anything.
That was in chapter 6 of Luke, I believe. It was before this. His faith in Jesus recognizes it. He says, I haven't seen faith like this even in all of Israel. That I don't have to come to your house. Jairus says, hey, come to my house. Come be in her presence for the healing to happen. The centurion recognized Jesus' authority and says, just say the word.
Just say the word, right?
Yeah, because I'm a man of authority, and I know you are. You recognize that authority. So, he tells her to be a good comfort, and this ends our story with the woman. Go in peace. That's it. That's all we ever hear about her. That's the end of her story. But her testimony is shared, and every time that we read this, we hear her testimony of how she had faith and that Jesus healed her. It's an eternal testimony of her that we always have. Now, while this event happens, what goes on that causes a ruckus? I spilled my coffee, and that is
Know
no
that.
the girl dies. So in verses 49 and 50, while he yet spake, telling the woman to go in peace, there comes one from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, thy daughter is dead, trouble not the master. Jairus, leader of the synagogue, has a slave or a servant in his house that recognizes who Jesus is as well. That's important. What does he call Jesus? Master. Even above his master, who is his boss, his owner even, he says, Jesus is the master. And at this point, sadly, it's too late for him to do it. But in verse 50, when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. Who's he speaking to? Who's he telling to fear not?
Jairus.
Can you imagine Jairus hearing that after he just heard the words that his daughter died? Those of us with children would be broken to hear those words that our kids have died.
Part of that story too is, we don't know how long this little event took place. As an anxious dad, what are we doing? What are we stopping here for this woman? What are we doing? Can we die?
Can we get into the house?
Can we get to the house?
Because Jairus' faith was conditional. It was like, Jesus needs to get to my house. The centurion was like, you say the word and it's done. Jairus' faith was, get to the house. So Jesus had to say something to him to combat that. And what was it? Fear not. Keep believing. Keep believing. Don't give up just because you hear all these rotten things that are being said, that your daughter's dead. How easy would it be for Jairus just to stop right there and just weep and just end the attempt to get Jesus to come to his house. Just to stop it. It's over. I give up. It would be easy.
So we think he had faith to think she could be healed, but not raised.
That's why Jesus says, fear not. What's your fear? That it's done. That it's over. There's nothing else that can be done. Why would Jesus say it if it wasn't? Believe only. Don't doubt. Don't doubt.
Leave it to me.
Let me take care of it. Yes, let Jesus take care of it, and she will be made whole. Now, Jesus has given a preview, right, of what's going to happen. When we see healing come today, how do we see it? We see it. Sometimes we see it partially. Sometimes we see it not even at all. We see it as something else altogether. We see a doctor doing something that fixes a limb, may keep somebody from dying, but fixes that part, and it's okay. Jesus is giving a preview here of the healing that he's going to give this girl. It's not partial. It's not just going to be her over her sickness. She's going to be made whole. Dead to whole like that. So, let's read the last little bit before we run out of time. The title here in our section is A Girl Raised. We would read those last few verses.
And when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in, save Peter, James, and John, the father and the mother of the maiden. And all wept and bewailed her, and he said, Weep not, she is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. And he put them all out, and took her by the hand, and called, saying, Maid, arise. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway. He commanded to give her meat. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them they should tell no man what was done.
There'd be the hard part.
There you go. All right, so we already know that for him to go into the house where a dead person that wasn't part of his family would make him and anybody else that went in there unclean. Leviticus chapter 21. You can't go in there unless you're a family member to take care of the body. He's breaking religious laws, even in Leviticus. But what does he say about her when he gets there? She's not dead. She's just asleep. So their response, and people presume that these are paid or maybe even some volunteer mourners. The more mourners you have, the more important you are. Although Jairus was leader of the synagogue, there was probably no lack of people that knew who he was and would be there to support him. They saw this girl die. Somebody at that house saw her die, saw her take her last breath. That word got out very quickly, right? The word got out even to the point where whoever that servant was that ran down the road to find Jesus, hey, it's done. To find Jairus, it's done. Don't bother the master. Instead, Jesus takes his top three, his close guys, Peter, James, and John, the mom and dad, and they go in there. Why he takes those three, why it's such a small group, maybe the room was small, we don't know. But we do know that later on, these guys are going to be very important, using their faith to help the sick, to heal the sick. There's going to be people that come back to life because of the things that these guys do. Maybe it was important for them to be there to see them. The mom and dad are there, they're the witnesses. I don't think Peter, James, and John, at this point, they've seen quite a bit. And he tells them that are outside, stop crying. She's going to be all right. So why does he say stop crying? Because she's not dead. And then later on tell the parents, don't say anything about this.
Expectation.
I think it's an interesting question because you have Jesus, he's performing a miracle of raising a girl from the dead. We, as the reader of this story, get to see that. Those that were there, other than James, John, Peter, and the parents, well, he was right. Maybe we missed it. Maybe she just was asleep. And the parents, he tells not to correct her. Why?
It doesn't always happen.
It's not.
Yeah.
His time isn't ready yet. It's
Maybe the humanity of him is like,
I often wonder about that too. Like one of the lepers, they told them not to say anything.
Yeah.
One of them didn't follow instructions.
No.
Came back.
And so all of these, the people are thronging around him. He's not going to have, can you imagine the publicity of Jairus' house? It's going to become a shrine. It's going to become a holy place that people are going to want to make it. This is where the girl was raised from the dead. We're going to go there.
So yeah, look what happens in all these towns where they see the shadow of the Virgin Mary.
Right.
It's like tourism goes up, just to go see this.
The spirit returns to her, and in the Greek that's pneuma, that's her breath. Her breath returns to her, and she arose straightway. And Jesus tells them, what? Give that girl something to eat. She'd been sick for a long time. You know she hadn't been eating. Girl needs to eat. Her healing is whole. Her body needs to catch up with her healing. Her resurrection is whole. She's that girl hungry. She needs something to eat. So tonight we're going to discuss the ramifications of Jesus' godliness on display. It's not godliness, it's godliness. It's not like God, it's God. Jesus' godness being on display in these miracles. Anybody have any other thoughts before we close? Ring ding. Go ahead. Thank you. Mike, will you close us?
Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be here today and to open up your word, and to study it and try to figure this stuff out, but we know that you are in charge, that you are in control of everything. Help us to be less controlled. And thank you for James and his preparation. Lift up Brother Bob as we go into our service today. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Sandra! Oh my goodness, look at that.
Look at here.
She's mobile, look at her.
Look at you, come on,
Oh, wow.
move it. Look at you, don't move it and groove. You don't wanna be here, no, you're gonna be right here, just go ahead.
Just right there.
Well,
Well, I need it on the other end though.
One.
Here, would you just hold that?
Thank you, Robert.
On the other
You wanna
end.
be on the other end? Oh, because of your leg,
Left leg.
prop it up. Well, I don't know if I'll work it. Well, go.
No, he's fine.
Hurry up.
He's fine.
Yes. No, he said, yesterday.
How
are you? The day before, he said they talked to him. I'm sure. He said they were right there.
You didn't stop.
So, one good day.
Where you need to go with?
I'm not going anywhere.